Hello friends! Today for your topic 11 review, we're going to be going over several different kinds of problems that you are going to see on the test. So here's our first one for today. Tristan has 110 peanuts. He saves 68 for himself. He divides the rest equally among 6 friends. He wants to know how many peanuts each friend gets. Now this problem says which equation should he use? Select all that apply. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's follow the steps that we always do whenever we're solving a multi-step problem. First of all, we're going to go ahead and visualize the problem. So what was this talking about? Okay, so we were talking about Tristan, we were talking about peanuts, and he's saving some for himself and he's dividing others between his friends. So next we have to think about an answer statement. So this won't always work out perfectly with the kinds of problems that you're going to be solving in your test because they don't always ask you to find the answer. Sometimes they just want to know if you can solve it with a number sentence. But what I recommend doing is still following the same steps that you would have if you were solving it without a multiple choice answer selection and figuring out which of the answers line up with what you figured out. So let's go ahead and step back to our problem. This wants to know what equations should he use. So I know ultimately my answer isn't going to be a certain amount of peanuts. I know it's going to be the different steps, the equations, those number sentences that I wrote before, number sentences, that I would use to solve that will help me. Now, since this says select all, what does that mean? We're gonna have more than one answer. So make sure you are watching it for those select all for those that have an E, because anytime you see 5 answer choices, you need to choose more than one. So if I were just going to solve this and not worry about my equations, I would have to figure out what step to do first. Tristan has 110 peanuts. He saves 68 for himself. And then he divides the rest equally among 6 friends. So I'd have to stop and say, okay, what does it mean if I am saving 68? Would that be addition, subtraction, multiplication, division? If you have some, but you're saving them for yourself, what are you doing? What operation would you use? It should be subtraction because we want to see how much he has left over to divide it for his friends. So my first step would be 110 minus 68. I'm going to do that first. And then what would I do next? Divide the rest equally among 6 friends. So then I would divide that by the 6 friends. So this is the equation that I would use to solve it. So before I go ahead and find my answer, I'm going to look and see which of these match what I have already done. So here first, A, 110 minus 68 equals P. Now notice, these little letters, these are variables. Remember, a variable is just a letter to stand for an unknown number. So don't let the P, L, N, M, or P mess you up. It's just letting us know that we don't know what the answer is yet, so we just stuck in a letter. So 110 minus 68, was that one of my 2 steps? Well, yes it was. So that means that I would select A for one of my answers, but I know that there's gonna be more than one, so I wanna keep on going. 42 divided by 6. Well, I don't have a 42 written down yet, so I don't know. 178 divided by 6. Nope. 110 divided by 6. Nope. 110 plus 68. No. However, this one I can get rid of because I see that it's the exact opposite of mine. So notice, friends, your most common incorrect answer will also probably be on the test. So make sure you are really visualizing those problems and using the words in the story to help you figure out what operation you should be using. So next I need to actually solve 110 minus 68 to see what number I'm supposed to be dividing by 6, because I notice that all of these say divided by 6. It's just my number up here that is different. So I need to chunk my problem and do that. So next I've got 110 minus 68. Whenever I subtract, I always ask myself, can I take this number away from this one? In this case, my answer is no. I can't take 8 away from 0, so I'm going to borrow from next door. Going to borrow this 1. I'll leave behind a 0. And I'm going to slide in my sneaky 10 right there. So now I have 10 minus 8. I know 10 minus 8 is 2. And now here, I have a 0 minus 6. Can I take 6 away from 0? No, I cannot. So I'm going to borrow from this 100, boop, and make this one a sneaky 10 too. Now I've got 10 minus 6 equals 4. But remember, I'm not done with my problem because we are doing multi-step problems today. So now I've got 42, and then I have to drop down my step 2, divided by 6. So this is the second equation that I would use to solve. So now I just need to see which of my answer choices are correct. Obviously, it's gonna be B, because that's the only one that has 42. This one says 178. How did they get that? Instead of subtracting, they added. So I know that one's a booger. And then here, 110 divided by 6. For this one, they skipped out that saving 68 for himself. So remember, friends, you've got to make sure you are reading carefully and notice. If I hadn't shown my work, I might not have been able to figure this one out. So please make sure that you have a piece of paper or something nearby when you are doing your math test so that you can actually work out your problems to make sure that you're finding the correct answer. Second problem coming right up. For this one, Jimena has 160 postcards. Niall has 45 postcards. Then Niall gives his collection away. He divides it equally among Jimena and 4 friends. How many postcards does Jimena have now? All right, if I'm going to follow my steps to solve multi-step word problems, the first thing I'm going to do is visualize. I'm going to picture in my mind what this is talking about. So I see that Jimena is collecting postcards. Jimena has a collection and Niall has a collection, but then Niall gave away his postcards. So I know we're talking about postcards. So next, write an answer statement. So for this one, how many postcards does Jimena have now? My answer should be, Jimena has blank postcards. Now I don't know how many she has yet. If I wanted, I could write in a variable. Maybe I could write P for postcards. Maybe I could write X for Jimena. Really, it doesn't matter. Or I could just leave it blank. So next up, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to come up with a number sentence that helps me solve based on the problem. Then I'm just going to chunk it and solve it. So Jimena has 160 postcards to start. Niall has 45 postcards. Niall gives his collection away. He divides it equally among Jimena and 4 friends. Now this part is really sneaky, friends, so please, please, please make sure you are reading these questions carefully, because Niall took his postcards, all 45 of them, and he divided it. So I know step 1 will be 45 divided by the people that he's sharing it between. Now, if you just see that number 4 and you're like, oh yeah, Miss Ingram, it's 45 divided by 4. Look, he divided it between his friends. Duh. Wrong. You gotta be very, very careful because it's not just 4 friends, it's Jimena and 4 friends. So if I have Jimena and I have 4 friends, how many friends do I actually have? 5. So I won't be doing 45 divided by the 4 friends. I am doing the 45 divided by 5. Then, after I do this first, what will I be doing? Oh yeah, I'm figuring out how many Jimena has, and he gave this answer to Jimena. So I know that I will also be, so this will equal P for postcards, and then I will take P for postcards, and then I will add it to 160, and that will give me my total. So first, I've got to solve for 45 divided by 5. Y'all know me, I love skip counting. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. All right, how many groups of 5 did I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I know that P here, postcards, equals 9 because we had 45 cards divided by 5 friends. So each friend will get 9 more postcards. But remember, I'm trying to figure out how many Jimena has. So I'm going to take her original 160, and then I'm going to add the 9 cards that I solved for up here. So instead of my variable of P, I'm just going to plug in my 9. 9 plus 160 equals 169. So Jimena has 169 postcards. All right, this question tells us a diner has 543 napkins. 223 were used at lunch, 134 are used at dinner. Mrs. Ingram says 223 minus 134 would give us N napkins used in all, and that 543 minus 89 equals R napkins would show us how many are left. Is her answer reasonable? All right, so this question is asking us, is this the math? Does this show you how you should solve the problem the correct way, or is it wrong and why? So once again, even though it's not asking for what is the actual answer, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and solve the problem, because if you solve the problem yourself, you can compare how you solved it to how I solved it. So once again, let's look at our problem. A diner has 543 napkins, 223 were used at lunch, and 134 were used at dinner. So this problem is actually figuring out how many were used in all from lunch and dinner, and how many napkins are left. So my first step, I'm going to read it and I'm going to visualize what we're talking about. We're talking about napkins used at a diner or a restaurant. So I know that we are going to be talking about napkins and how many are used and then how many are left over. So my answer of how many are left over is there are blank napkins are left. Now, that's my answer statement. That's my step 2. But now I need to figure out how to actually solve this. So I'm going to come up with my number sentence from the problem itself. So here the diner has 543 napkins. I know that is how many they started with. This is a total. Now, it tells me that 223 were used at lunch and 134 were used at dinner. So, if I'm trying to figure out how many are left over, my first step is figuring out how many I've used so far. So, if I'm trying to figure out how many are used in all, what operation usually helps us combine numbers to figure out how many in all? That would be addition. So I know that my first step to solve this would really be 134 plus 223. Now, once I have solved for that, then I can figure out how many napkins are left. So 543 in all, 223 at lunch, 134 at dinner. So now I'm going to add those together. 4 plus 3 equals 7. 3 plus 2 equals 5. And 1 plus 2 equals 3. So I know that so far there have been 357 that were used in all. Now, if I compare this to what Miss Ingram says, Miss Ingram said that 223 minus 134 equals the napkins used in all. So hold on. Right off the bat, I see a difference between the way that I solved it and the way that Mrs. Ingram, that silly girl, tried to solve it. So if I look through at my answers for is her answer reasonable, I can look through and see, okay, well, what was her mistake? Well, you're right, she subtracted instead of added. Notice, subtract sign. So now I can go through some of these answers and figure out. So first of all, yes, our answer is reasonable. Well, if I messed up step 1, is my answer reasonable? No, it sure will not be. So I'm going to know that that one's a booger right away. Now my other part A answers are trying to figure out the mistakes. No, at least 223 napkins are used, so 89 is too small a number for n. No, she adds the number to find n. No, she made an error in subtraction. Well, hold on. So if I go through these, C says she adds to find the number to find n. If I look up here at the n for that variable, did Mrs. Ingram add? Nope, she subtracted. So what they are describing didn't happen in the problem. So I know that that one is a booger. So for part A, I need to figure out, did Mrs. Ingram make an error in subtraction, or did she choose too small of a number for n? So when I solved for n, we found the answer 357. So was her problem an error in subtraction? Or was it that 223, or the 89, excuse me, is too small? Hopefully you recognize that 89 is too small. When this says 223 napkins are used, that's bringing you back up to here. It's explaining how we know that there's no way it could be 89, because if we use 223 at lunch, how could we have used less when we combined that 134 from dinner? So we know that it has to be A, because 89 is way too small, because when we solved it, we got 357. So I know A for part A is correct. Now, part B. Select all the equations you would use to find the remaining napkins after lunch and dinner. Now, we only solved one step of our two-step problem up here. So the first thing we can do is say, okay, well, is this equation one of the possible answers? If this equation is one of the possible answers, then we'll know that that is correct. So we said 134 plus 223. Is that? Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one. 223 plus 134. Oh, boom. Commutative property. Notice they put 223 first, but that doesn't matter. So we know here that C is going to be a correct answer. But select all. So that means we know there's more than one. And really, we should have known that there was going to be more than one anyway, because we know it's a multi-step problem, which means that we should have multiple, more than one equation. So we found our step 1. So now what we have to do is solve our problem for step 2 to figure it out. Now, if this was how many I had that were used at lunch and dinner, 223 and 134, now I have to figure out the difference between how many there were to start and now how many are left. So what operation will help me compare two numbers to find the difference? Subtraction. If I'm ever figuring out how much is left, we're probably subtracting. So I know that my total, 543, would need to be subtracted from my n number of napkins, which we solved for 357. Now, I'll tell you a secret. Technically, you don't have to find this answer. You don't need to do the subtraction. You just need to say, okay, well, which one of these is set up correctly? Does this give us that second step? No, it does not. We know this one is wrong. This one subtracted our lunch and dinner totals just like Miss Ingram did, and we already said she was wrong, so we knew it had to be wrong. This one, 543 plus 223, what did they do here? We added our total to how many were used at lunch, but that doesn't make sense. It didn't say we got 223 new napkins. It said we used the napkins that we had, so we know it couldn't have been addition. So we know that one's wrong too. Here we have 543 plus 134. How did they get this one? They added up the total with the dinner. So once again, it doesn't make sense because we used them. That means they're not here anymore, not that we got more. So we know that this one can't be addition either, which leaves us with E, 543 minus 357, which if we look right over here, da-da-da-da, is also correct. So friends, once again, even though this question didn't ask me to solve for the answer, solving it helped me figure out the mistake in my reasoning, as well as helped us figure out which equations would help us. So it's so important that you have a piece of paper and that you try to work through these as you are taking your test.